Did he bring that for me, that water? Good. I'm gonna drink.
I bet it's for you.
Oh my God. I gotta go say hi to my sweetheart, Raylene.
Find out Friday whether or not I tore my knee or not.
What'd you do?
I jumped over a bank. I had 100 pounds of camping gear on my back. Jumped over, and as soon as my leg hit the ground, my knee just absolutely buckled.
Oh my God, these are the worst. I wish I had my phone. I'd show you. I bought a fifth wheel, but it's all leather with planters. It has 2 bathrooms. That's my kind of
Yeah.
Well, I do need a hip though. It does. They gave me 2 steroid shots. Didn't work. You know, I knew it was not going to be here. Is that dipshit with a hyphen land? Yeah, because his cars are both gone. He lives on my street. I think, and I see packages on the front door. So I think he's out of town. I think you realize that. Oh, I think you realize that. The shit's over here. We have the votes now. You know.
Wow.
Yeah. Now you're.
Coming for me.
You're gonna be next year. Yeah. You're gonna let people know that. And I know you don't want to. So no way. No freaking way.
Okay, good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for coming. Sorry, I don't have my gavel. Left it at the shop. Just wanted to welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. I do have to call this meeting to order because there is a quorum of the Barre City Council here, even though we will not be running what we consider a regular council meeting. But with a quorum, we do have to warn. So this meeting has been warned. We will be taking minutes and we will be recording. Want to just introduce, if I could get the councilors to stand and introduce. We've got a couple out in the audience. I'm sorry. We don't have a mic. This is actually just for the recording. I'm sorry. Am I not speaking loud enough? I'm trying to. All right.
Yeah.
I'd be thrilled to hear. Yeah, that really works. Wow. So I just wanted to start. Normally, we all council members have name tags in front of them, and there's actually a few who are seated in the audience. So, councilors, if you just wouldn't mind introducing yourself real quick.
Hello, my name's Don Ruthier, first year counselor. I live in North End. Was brought up in the North End. Obviously, represent Ward 3. Thank you.
I am Michael Deering II. I am your other Ward 3 counselor. Thank you all for being here tonight.
I'm Beth Hilgartner. I'm the junior counselor from Ward 1.
Amanda Gustin, representing Ward 2.
I'm Sonia Spalding, and I represent Ward 1.
Jeff Bergeron, Ward 2.
Thank you. I'd also like to introduce and recognize, if you wouldn't mind, Teddy.
Hello, everyone. Teddy Watsap, one of our state representatives.
Michael.
Michael Luton, also a state representative.
And Michael and Teddy, both freshman legislators, but I got to tell you, they didn't act like it. They both did a heck of a job. They delivered for Barre City, not just in the flood relief bills, but in a lot of fronts. And so, Michael and Teddy, thank you. We appreciate your efforts. And also wanted to introduce Josh Jerome. If you wouldn't mind standing up, Josh.
New executive director for Barre Area Development.
Josh comes to Barre Area Development in the Barre area with a ton of experience. We snagged him from Montpelier. They're still upset. Oh well. So we're just going to start this off. First of all, really thank you for coming. We're going to give you a little exercise. We've got some maps and pens, and we're just going to ask you to use your imagination and give us some direction. This is the first in what we hope will be a series of meetings, not only to discuss the north end, but also to discuss what our future post-flood looks like in the city of Barre. Right now, there is a tremendous opportunity. Senator Welch supported Vermont and delivered $68 million in 2023. It's important to make that distinction because it's 2023 Community Development Block Grant / Disaster Recovery. You'll hear us talk about it all the time as CDBG-DR. So you'll get used to hearing that. But the $68 million that came to the state of Vermont, as they analyzed that and awarded it by county, $55 million of that is coming to Washington County. We'll be applying, submitting the pre-applications in the next 30 to 45 days. So for Barre, think about that. $55 million coming to Washington County. And, you know, we all love our neighbors in Plainfield, but they were affected in the 2024 event. So that would make them ineligible for the 2023 grant money. Obviously, the city of Montpelier will be there. They'll be looking for their share. But we've been talking loud and making a strong case for the city of Barre. Because especially here in the north end, it's our contention that we lost more. We lost much, much more. We lost, Nicholas, around 50 or so housing units that were badly needed in a market where you can't afford to lose one housing unit. We lost 50. People are still trying to recover. People are still struggling. And this $55 million has an emphasis on housing. So we believe that in the city of Barre, we can make a very strong case for the projects that we're going to be presenting to the state of Vermont through the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. So in a little bit, we're going to ask you all to engage. We're going to get you going with your pens and your paper. But I'm just going to introduce Nicholas Castro, our city manager, and have him talk a little bit about some of the flood mitigation projects.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, everyone. It's great to be back at the Moutois. I'm going to share some updates on, as the mayor said, on some flood mitigation initiatives that we've been working on. I'm going to start with the good news, which is we successfully negotiated with the state this past year to remove the trestle bridge. So for those of you who are here from the north end, I don't have to go much further, but for everyone else, there was an obsolete spur of the railroad that was serving a granite company. Didn't do much but catch debris in the river. And when that happens, it makes the water go where it shouldn't go, into people's houses and basements. So worked with the mayor, the council, to come to an agreement with AOT to remove that bridge. Anything that is subsequently placed there will have to be a much more flood resilient structure that will not cause the problems that this old one with. So that was great news right off the bat. We worked on a really thorough process identifying flood mitigation projects for the whole city through something called the RIVER program through the state. And RIVER is a long acronym. I couldn't tell you what it stands for, but it was basically the state giving us engineering experts to help us identify the best projects to mitigate flood damages in the city. So through that process, in total, we identified many projects, 40 to 50 projects that we could do over time. Through a deliberative process at the city council, those projects were whittled down little by little until we got to sort of a top 10 list. And from that, we came to 3 applications that were going to be the highest priority for Barre. Now, those projects were, the 3 were a Harrington Avenue floodplain. So those of you may be familiar, been here for a while, there's several buyouts happen along Brook Street that created a floodplain right there where Gunner's Brook is. And a debris rack was built there, which is supposed to catch trees, obstacles that come in so that they don't choke further downstream. Now, the issue that happened there is that the debris rack worked almost too well. And what happened is it created a dam, right, and diverted the water down Maple Avenue. So that project, very exciting. What it will do it'll do some buyouts of properties that were heavily damaged there, and then it'll redesign that debris rack to sort of stagger it, right? So right now it's a straight line across the brook. This will put, sort of angle it so that the water can still snake through while the debris is captured. The second project is to do a buyout along the property right next to the Willie Street Bridge and to fortify that bridge. Now that bridge is really important for many reasons. It's the only access to that neighborhood. It's the only access to our wastewater treatment plant. If that bridge goes or if it's made unpassable, we are in big trouble. So this Willie Street Bridge project will effectuate a buyout of 572 North Main, which is where the old air parking lot was. It will basically dig that out, scoop it out so that water can be captured there. And then it will fortify and widen the structure of Willie Street Bridge so that water can move under it without damaging the bridge itself. The third project was removal of the Berlin Street Bridge. And this is the one I've heard about the most. I think probably all of us have heard the most about this one. And let me tell you why that project was identified. When we had our near flood in December of 2023, that was sort of a slow motion version of our July 2023 flood. And what that helped us do was to see where our first points of trouble were in the city. And what we identified, we have several places along the city that DPW checked, that the fire department checked, that we're looking for signs of trouble ahead, right? The Berlin Street Bridge is one of them. And the Berlin Street Bridge was the first one that was about to go over the line on that day, right? And that flood, it never happened, thank God. I know some people still got a little bit of damage from that flood, but it wasn't as severe as it could have been. But that was the first place where we were gonna lose our battle with the river, right there at the Berlin Street Bridge. I know I know a lot of emotions around it, but when we looked at this river with the river engineers, they tell us, and the data tells us, that removal of that obstacle, allowing the water to move through, is going to help doing what we want, which is to get the water out of Barre, right? We don't want that water hitting that bridge and spreading out to Vines, Campini, and the north end, right? So that's why that project rose to the top of the list. So those are the three major mitigation projects we have been working on. We received word that they've been submitted as alternates for hazard mitigation grant program funding under the state. There's a lot of projects to go around in Vermont. These, hopefully, if more funding becomes available, would be on the top of their list for funding. We also have, part of our mitigation strategy is buyouts. There were about 60 buyout applications that came into the city, which is it's a lot. We have approved about 27 of them. And the reason we only approved some of them versus others is because of the very stringent FEMA rules around buyouts, right? So when we do a FEMA buyout, and you can see that across the city, right? At Brook Street, where I mentioned the floodplain is, we can never redevelop that space ever again, right? That is bought with FEMA dollars. That means nothing can ever go there. So when we do any other subsequent buyouts, if we buy that property out, we can never redevelop it. So we were very strategic about the buyouts we pursued. We pursued clusters along the river, right? And that was after advice we got from other states that have been going through this. So when we buy out a cluster along the river, what that allows us to do is to create a mitigation value for the city as a whole, right? So right now, as I mentioned, the Harrington Avenue site, right? So we approved, I believe it was 5 buyouts right in that area. It's gonna leave just those 2 houses at the end, basically. And so what that's gonna do is that's gonna allow us to capture water there before it hurts anyone's house downstream of, downhill on Maple, right? So that has a value to the city, has a value to other residents. If there was a house clustered in the middle of a neighborhood, we didn't pursue that buyout. Why is that? Because it's hard for us to direct water to a house that's sitting between 4 other houses, right? It just doesn't have a mitigation value as a whole to the city. That's not to mean that that person wasn't devastated and they had a lot of damage. It just means that there's no mitigation value as a whole, and the city would lose a parcel for forever, right? And forever is a long time, and especially when we're talking about needing places to build because of the housing crisis we're in. So we have about 27 buyouts in the queue. I was going to announce this to the council last night, but we have started to schedule our first closings of buyouts from the 2023 flood. So we have 6 closings scheduled. So 6 of your neighbors who have applied for a buyout are about to see the relief of that. And here we are almost 2 years out, right? So this takes a long time to get to fruition. The last piece I'll mention is that we have, there's a lot of information we just don't know. And so we've commissioned 2 studies to help us better understand the way water moves and doesn't move through the city. So we paid for a hydrology study, we paid for a storm pipe study. These studies will help us understand where our weak points are in a more scientific way, how we can target this in a better way. These studies will help us fund future programs because we'll have the data that backs it up. And you may remember this earlier this spring, I believe it was, we had an alert about the helicopter flying really low over the city. They were collecting LiDAR data to help inform that study. So it's going to be a really high-tech study of our city, our waterways, the topography that will really help us keep going as we move down this list of projects. So those were the main mitigation efforts we have underway. And happy to talk to you. If you catch me here in the room, I'm happy to talk to you more about those as the evening goes along. Thank you.
But only until 7.
Only till
Nicholas
7.
has a young family, and so he's got to bring his son somewhere at 7 o'clock. But like I said, this is going to be the first in a series of meetings. I don't know if any individual counselors have something they'd like to say or would like to make some points before we move on. No? So I'd like to start with, I'd like to hear from you. This is a controversial subject, Berlin Street Bridge. Listen, some people feel passionately about not having it removed. You know, I can tell you, speaking only for myself and not for the entire council, what I pledged right at the start of this journey was to listen to the science. The council appropriated, I forget what the total was, it was over $100,000 for the hydrology and river study, as well as a study of our current stormwater system, so we could really understand, for the first time ever, have science backing up the data on how water moves through our city. Where are the highest points, where are the lowest points, where does mitigation do the most value? And I'm going to take that same approach with the Berlin Street Bridge. I understand if that bridge wasn't there, it inconveniences a lot of people. But what we've been told, and council correct me if I'm wrong, but what I remember hearing is that during the flooding at the Berlin Street Bridge and the trestle is gone now, if they were not there, the flood waters on the north end would have been reduced by approximately 18 inches. 18 inches of water.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate, listen, the straightest point between my office and my home was West Patterson. I miss that street so much because I used to be able to turn down and literally I wouldn't have to sit through that torturous light on South Main Street in air. And I would love to see that road open tomorrow, but we have different priorities, and the priorities that the city has are much greater than Tom getting home 7 minutes earlier. And I'll say the same thing to the folks who would object to the Berlin Street Bridge, again, depending on what the science says. You know, we haven't gotten the full study back yet. But as far as I'm concerned, if a little bit of inconvenience to a neighborhood results in 18 inches of reduced floodwaters in the north end, I think that's kind of a fair trade. You know, I think that's a reasonable position to take. And I'm willing to hear from, does anyone have anything to say on that subject? Yes, sir.
Yes.
You can, if you can stand and speak loud or take the mic, whatever you'd like to do. No, you got to turn that way.
Oh, no, I don't. Yeah.
That's not a microphone.
Very
No.
good. Pertaining to the Berlin Street Bridge, I've lived there since I was 2 years old and I'm 76. I've seen 3 bridges where the Elbachauss is now. None of them ever had any problems with backups. But at the same time, you had Tony Kano, who was later on a barber, working for the city with a D6 in the river, pushing stuff up in a pile and hauling it out of there. Mm-hmm. As far as the last flood we had, not the first one, but the second flood, the only thing that saved us, gentlemen, was it stopped raining.
Mm-hmm.
I sat in my pickup truck over there in Allen Lumber Company's old parking lot, and South Vine Street was flooded. And this is where the height of the river makes a big difference, and it doesn't take much. The river was up, and I said to a gentleman, we were watching it, and South Vine Street was completely flooded. I said, Jesus, that river's gone down. Went up to South Vine Street, the water was gone. Most of the flooding down there came back through the storm drains. The water had no place to go. Mm-hmm. So, and what, I read an article Gail Gelford made a comment that there was gonna be a lot of property that had to be purchased before they could put a very good truss bridge in there. It would be probably the cheapest way to go.
Mhm.
Just like what used to be there, well, the old bridge, well, the original bridge was taken out in the early 50s. Then they built Willie Street, Berlin Street, Blackwell Street, and Prospect. Orange bridges that were all, they had the aldermen's names on them. They all did a very good job, but they were taking the trash out of the river. The problem there at Berlin Street, I sat there and watched it. It was all going good till a couple of dumpsters came down through and plugged the river right off. Then the other debris catches. If they could just clean up the riverbanks, bring that somewhere, if it's wood, bring it to an old railroad bed, leak, like guys, cut it up and burn it. But that's the big problem there. As far as putting another bridge in, I think that would be, well, you take like Granite Imports, they've got a saw plant down after you go across William Street, right, out in 2 or 3 or 4 times a day, go to the saw plant to go all the way up to Blackwell Street, around and down and back the same way. Not good at all. As far as doing away with the bridge, yeah, that'd be great for traffic, but really not great for some business. Over at Harrington Avenue, my, I'm sorry, I don't even remotely agree with that. They put some of those, they call them racks. I always thought racks was when you put stuff up on. It's just build a dam. They also put some in, correct me if I'm wrong, up by LePage's gravel pit, up above Mike Boots' shop to catch the debris. But what really worked the best, and I really came in and thanked the mayor for it, or the city manager, sorry, Mr. Mayor, that after the second almost flood, that Mother Nature saved us and it stopped raining, they got a 60-foot reach excavator, and I will say skimmed, I won't use any D word, skimmed off the sediment and removed the rubble, and we've had a lot of high water since then. And I've been watching that river. It doesn't come up that much. But when we lost with this albatross that's there, big I-beams that are 4 feet, lost 4 feet from the top, they quit digging out the river, and so that came up. What a mess. I remember the day they were built. Me and my father were watching them pour the concrete for where the ends of the beams were gonna go in. He said, oh, must be the new beams are gonna have an arch straight across. So I would say the key to longevity, price-wise, truss bridge on Berlin Street, and the key is keep removing the debris. You know, like over on Port Brook Street, there was never any water over on Maple Avenue, but that damn people no fence, it trigged right there.
Yep.
Over onto Maple Avenue, as you all know. Anyways.
Thank
All we
you.
got to thank for here, everybody from Barre, is the name Thurman Dix, and also the East Barre Dam. Can you imagine trying to build that today?
Wouldn't quite work. Anyone else? And we were talking about Berlin Street. Herb? And if you could keep it a little
Excuse me,
brief, that would be, I just want to give everybody a
Sure.
chance. Thank you.
Okay, my name's Herb Heath, the record, and the thing is that I lived right over on Berlin and Vine Street for a lot of years. And so I got a chance to live to see that. Matter of fact, that's where I got my start, John, was right down on the north end. So I know North End pretty well. And what I'd like to propose is that you have a drawbridge on Berlin Street. And you'd have a great big beautiful red button on the city manager's desk. And when it starts to flood, you hit that button, the drawbridge will come up, and all that debris will go right straight to Mount Billy. This is all benign now, because once you pull that drawbridge up, that's it. And it wouldn't be too difficult to certainly pull that drawbridge up when you know floods come. That'd be the end of your problems, it seems to me. Now, you'd have to look into drawbridge, I don't know what they cost, but it certainly would be a remedy for this whole thing, don't you think?
Well, that's probably the most creative solution I'm going to hear tonight, Herb.
Well, you can leave it to me.
So
Leave it to me.
I gotta give you, it's early, but I got a feeling I gotta give you the grand prize. Anyone else on the Berlin Street Bridge? Let me just say this. We heard a little bit about dredging. Listen, one thing I am going to do is listen to the scientists. I believe that strategic dredging, that removing some of that material, well, that only makes sense. I mean, we all clean our gutters in the spring and fall. So it makes sense, but you also have to, I love humor, but I'm not going to send the debris to Montpelier. I'm not going to take a problem and send it downstream and make my neighbors suffer.
I should have said that.
No, that's okay.
Strike that from.
But, we need to affect reasonable, effective scientific solutions. And I absolutely believe and have talked to the river scientists and said, does dredging have a place in the program? Because we hear a lot about it, and I hear so much about it, I've got to consider it, and they agree. That strategic maintenance in areas like, you talked about Granite Street, down by Granite Street, sort of in back of Desiro's, the machine shop.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was a huge island of sand there that wasn't there. It was enormous. We removed it. That was a smart thing to do. So I'll just stop there with dredging, but like I said, everything that we do has to be science-based. Yes, sir.
One more thing.
And just a question for the city. So I grew up on Blackwell Street. I live on Berlin Street. I've been using that bridge since I got my license, and I am going to miss it if it's gone. And my question to the city is that's going to cause a new traffic pattern. So people used to coming down Berlin Street is going to be diverted on Smith Street, coming over the Blackwell Street Bridge. And Smith Street is not quite a formal road. Are there any plans or considerations for upgrading the affected roads when if that bridge goes out, they have new traffic patterns?
You want to take that, Nicholas?
Yeah, I think we'd have to do, and the council has said this, we'd have to do traffic studies to see what the impact is. I think part of it also is making sure that people are using, 62 to get all the way down to Main Street, right? That's what 62 is designed as, an artery. And so, if we don't necessarily have to divert people from Berlin to Smith to Blackwell to Main Street, if you're going to Main Street, just keep going all the way down 62, right? That's what it's designed for and designed to do. So there would be ancillary work that would have to happen. But as you heard, I think it's those challenges and those problems are worth the reduction of floodwater in some of those neighborhoods. So definitely understand that it's not going to be easy and that it won't have other side effects, but I think those are worthwhile to fix if we're getting rid of the main problem, which is water in people's houses.
Sue?
I got some petitions going. I got like over 500 names. Most of you people that are in this room, I think, signed them. We talked about the mitigation of the river and the removal of the bridge, which nobody's looking forward to. Also, there's a lot of your drains that are blocked. I got an 8-foot stick the other day down on First Street and stuck it down. It only went down 4 feet because the water's not going down. It's bouncing back and forth and it's causing sinkholes all over First Street and all over up and down on the main street of North Main. That water is not emptying into that river. And you talk about all the stuff that's on top of it, that people should be taking out of it. Underneath that bed is tons of stuff. That river should be dredged, as far as I'm concerned. It was when I was a kid. If you look back on when we started flooding 5 years before this big flood, I went to the state and I went to the city. The beds are getting high. They're getting higher. You gotta lower them down. They're almost coming up as far as the road is. The water's gonna run over and it's gonna flood. City said it was the state said it was the city. Every year I complained. So here it was. We all flooded out big time. It was worse than 1927. I don't care where the water comes from. Every big dig has caused a lot of water back up on Maple Avenue. Harrington Avenue did not work. Cost a lot of water coming down from there. It was like a river. I saw a river coming down Granite Street, first time ever in my life, on the second flood. I don't have the answers. Mayor Lozon, you said you're gonna go with the science guys. To me, it's like, right in front of me, you can see everything that needs to be done and nobody's doing anything. They're not cleaning the rivers, they're not doing anything. It's been what, 2 years, 3 years? But we flooded down there before slowly, in our basements. Everybody wants you to raise your houses. What are you gonna do with your sewer pipes? Even when the water gets up, it comes in and it floods into your cellar. All the sewer pipes back up and flood your cellar right to your first floor. I don't know what the answer is, but taking that bridge out and not dredging these rivers is not the answer. You can't put traffic where it doesn't fit. You got a big sidewalk now down over where you want the traffic to go. There's only one car per in the lane. You can't get to. And I can't believe the people that run businesses down there didn't complain about it. They can't even get their granite trucks in and out of the building because there's no room. Everything has been changed around in this state, in this city, and it's not for the better, I can tell you that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Amy Gelford, I live on Fox Street.
Don't punch me.
West Street. So I just want to say I resent comments about concern about Berlin Street, which being about convenience. I live in that neighborhood. I used to fight in the traffic advisory council or traffic advisory committee to try to slow down the traffic and reduce the traffic on Berlin Street. Fought to get that 25-mile-an-hour sign that's there. I kept fighting for crosswalks to be painted.
Amy, could you hold the mic a little closer?
Yeah,
There you
because
go.
I hated how dangerous it was, but people wouldn't stop. When crosswalks would be freshly painted, people would actually stop and stepped out in them, and I felt like it was really dangerous for the bus stop, kids out there, that kind of thing. So I was fighting for Berlin Street to have less traffic and to be slower. From that era, I think the study was that Berlin Street was maybe the 12th, don't quote me on that number, but it was maybe the 12th or 15th busiest street in the city. So it's not a minor thing, it does get a lot of traffic. My concern for it is not about convenience of how fast I can get to Price Chopper. My concern is when you come from North Main, there's a sign at the corner in front of Allen Lumber, Parking Miles, that says H, right? That blue H for turning to the hospital. And that's the route we tell people to take for the hospital. If you live in that neighborhood, you know how often there are fire trucks, police trucks flying up Berlin Street. So I can fly up Berlin Street and get up to Prospect Street. There's a nursing home at the top of that hill. There's whole infrastructure there, and we're talking about building more housing there. There's also a lot of people up at High Gates who don't drive and come down this way, and so bus routes are important. So it's not just about convenience, like adding a little bit to people's drive. I would actually love to have less traffic in there, but I would say, you know, Judy started talking about a traffic study. Emails that she copied me on, and people started picking up talking about it. I would say if it's no big deal to close the Berlin Street Bridge, close it for Heritage Festival in a couple weeks. See what happens. See how that goes. And if you're not comfortable doing that, why? If police or fire isn't happy with that, why? Because I've asked before, if the fire chief or police chief will come to a city council meeting and say, we don't need that, we're fine. we're good. We can, the turning radius on Blackwell Street is good for us. Line of sight of Blackwell and Smith, yeah, there's a pedestrian crosswalk that's in a blind curve under the Route 62 overpass, but that's okay. We're okay with that for fire and police. If fire and police, I will trust them, their judgment. I have not heard them weigh in. So my concern is not just about convenience, it's about creating a different public safety problem to try to solve a really horrible, rare public safety problem versus more common public safety problem. As far as trusting the science, there's not a single science, right? There's the science of what you're going to measure and what you're going to model. Every model is going to give you different results. What it comes up to for solutions is engineering solutions. If you interviewed a bunch of different engineers, you might get different answers. So the consultants that we had hired by the state met with Daniel Ozarski and me because we had made so many comments at city council. So they scheduled a teams meeting with us on our state employee emails and met with us and talked to Danielle about the Courier Park area, talked to me about the North End. And in that meeting, they said, well, how long was the Berlin Street Bridge closed after the flood? I said, I don't know, a few months. And they said, oh, did that go okay? I said, well, we got through it, but, and it just feels to me like, did that become the easy solution? Because it's hard to figure out an engineering solution. Because of the railroad. That's the problem. The railroad is right there, so that limits what you can do on the north side of Berlin Street in terms of the bridges that Peter Anthony and other folks have talked about over time, as far as the history of that and why that bridge was not built the same way as the others. So I just think before you make a long-term mistake, a long-term decision about that bridge, look at other engineering solutions. The other variable that has changed is Arcane Miles is going to get out of there. And I can't imagine anybody's going to build right on that riverfront. Probably never should have been built in that location, in retrospect, right? Who's going to buy that and develop on that? Then it's going to get flood insurance for that. Like that would be a dumb place to build a business. Can we move the railroad? And I know people have said, oh, that's not the project on the table that we're talking about. But conditions change. Let's look at what we can do there. So I pulled it up on my phone. Judy vouched for me here. But on December 2023, I walked around the corner of Ladd Street because when you're at the corner of Ladd and Smith, you can see the back of Hutchins Roofing, which is on West 2nd Street, which doesn't get a lot of attention. And the water is coming up into the backyard of Hutchins Roofing. Okay, so that's West 2nd Street. So Berlin Street didn't flood then, but it was coming up in the back of West 2nd. That is downstream. So even if you fix Berlin Street, you have not fixed the problems that are downstream from that. That's from the Willie Street Bridge, right? And as far as trusting the science, when Ned Swanberg from DEC came and talked, before the private consultants came, the state river consultants came, he showed us models of how the Willie Street Bridge is acting like a dam because of the way that it comes down. The Berlin Street Bridge is a debris problem. And so I kept lobbying you guys for, we have to do something about the debris getting in. It's the dumpster problem, right? Like those of us in the neighborhood saw, like that's the problem. There's literally dumpsters and truck bodies in the river. So we're trying to solve a debris problem with getting rid of the entire bridge. And I wish there was something we could do about catching debris, controlling debris upstream. Why are these dumpsters falling in? Like that shouldn't be a thing. And I don't care if you hate the environment or you're a tree hugger. I'm way out on the tree hugger kind of things. I don't want trash in the river. Nobody wants trash in the river, right? So why can't we focus on that? You know, street cleaning needs to be done. Thank you finally for sweeping Berlin Street in our neighborhood. It took apparently 3 tons of asphalt. Judy said to her to fill the holes on our street. So we put 3 tons of asphalt in, and then the city could come and clean. And it's great because you pick up tons of sand. Because you know what? I'm a tree hugger. I don't want the sand in the river off of paving. Neither do the people who want it to dredge. So, you know, the dredging is not some kind of absolute all or nothing. You know, you can read statements that was recently one from Secretary Moore and Secretary Flynn from ANRDOT about, yes, there has to be maintenance. And when we have an urban river like this, we broke it, we bought it, right? Yep. Like, we have made it unnatural, and therefore we have to go with that. It's not going to function like a natural one, and they're supportive of that. So I think there's a lot of middle ground on focusing on debris, sand, grit, keeping all of that out. And I just hope all of that will be taken into account, and that we may consult with other scientists and engineers, because I think you'll get a whole range of different opinions. If you have a whole bunch of different engineers, would give you the same opinion. That's much stronger than one study. We haven't done the stormwater study yet to support that.
Thank you.
Well, Amy stole my thunder a little bit. But because I can see the Beltline intersection from my kitchen window, that was supposed, if the bridge has to go out, we need to do something about the lights on the Beltline, because the traffic is gonna be horrendous. And the way that trucks come in from Berlin down the hill and don't see the sign that says flashing lights ahead, and they hit the brakes and they go through the red lights and disregard the ambulances coming up the street. The ambulance and fire truck basically have to almost come to a stop at the intersection of Berlin Street and the Beltline most times, because people are still going through. There should be lights like in Burlington where if the ambulance and fire truck are coming through, the lights all go off or they all go green, whichever way they need them. My other question was 5 years down the road, what's gonna happen to the Arcane Mines property? Is it gonna get fenced in so that it doesn't get torn apart like some of the sheds we have down on Blackwell Street? And we have the unhoused using them because they need shelter, but that's a big area. I know we can't rebuild there. I'd love to see a daycare or a community building down there, but I know that that's gonna be impossible. But we can't let our K Miles just walk away and leave it an eyesore for us.
Thank you. Thanks, Judy. Anyone else on that subject? A couple folks, yeah.
They're here for a few, yes.
I'm Joanna Calderera. I live in the big brick house across the street. I know that we've talked about the study for the rivers. We've been discussing it for at least 2 years. And I know that when we had these meetings 2 years ago, we had scientists who actually came and talked to us about the different types of things that can be done, the 5 different things that you can do, you know, building up the banks, dredging, you know, widening culverts, all of that. And I don't know if there's been anything done with that data since then. I know that there's been some discussion about doing some more study, and looking at the river as, different pieces. Because it was communicated that in some parts of the river, dredging may be the answer from the scientist's standpoint. Small sections. Others may require embankment, you know, higher embankments, others may require bigger culverts. Does this ring a bell with anyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, good. Are we gonna look at this, because all these studies take time and they take money. Are we going to prioritize like sections of this so that we don't waste 10 years waiting for the results of the studies?
You want to grab that, Nicholas? You want me to?
I mean, we got the latest hydrology study, which is LiDAR data.
Could you use the microphone?
Yes.
We all can't hear you like that.
The city council approved funding for that hydrology study that I mentioned was happening earlier this spring with the helicopters flying over to collect all the data. That's gonna be the state-of-the-art model that's gonna show us the best and latest information about how water moves or doesn't move throughout the city. The idea is to take that information together with the information that the second study that we commissioned, which was on our storm pipes, storm drain system, and marry those two and inform the projects that become the priority. Through the river program process that we went through with the city council, I know we're focused on these 3 projects tonight because they're the ones that rose to the top, but the list, it's on the city website. I'll make sure to post it on the banner there so everyone can get to it more easily, but there's like 50 projects there, right? And so the idea is to use this data to help us prioritize those handful of projects we can do at a time. Now, these projects are all expensive. They can't be funded solely by the city. They require federal, state assistance, however you wanna meld it together to put the funding together. these are not projects that on its own the city can pick up and fund, right? So we can do projects at a time. That's why this year we had those 3 top tier projects, which are the ones that rose very quickly to the top based on the data that river engineers put together and studied. So I guess that's a long way of saying, yes, we're gonna use this latest and greatest information, marry it with the storm system, apply it to these lists of projects that we've already looked at. What that will help us do down the road is a lot of grants require you to have some science behind them. And having those hydrology studies say, hey, this is how the water's moving here, this is a problem right there, and there's a choke point in the storm drain, this is a great project to do. That will hopefully help that project rise to the top and get money.
And the reason I asked that, I don't think I need it, the reason I asked that is because.
Microphone, please.
The reason I asked that is because I wondered if any of those studies are gonna be in areas right around the bridge. Because is there going to be a possible solution to slow down the debris, you know, that then would not hit this bridge? Like, would there be something similar to the rack that didn't work, but a different modified rack that could be put in place, you know, before we get to the bridge? Because I will say, living here, we do hear and see the fire. I would love the fire department to weigh in on this and tell us what the impact of removing that bridge is gonna do for them. I did have a very bad double compound fracture that got delayed for a long time, and I was in an ambulance going very slowly across that bridge, and thank God we had that route to get me to the hospital. And so I think it would be interesting, what you mentioned about closing the bridge down during the Heritage Festival, or closing it down for a trial period and see what it's like for fire and police and the rescue system. Because that was my concern, is that is the main, you know, track that they take. Rerouting myself to get somewhere is no big deal. You know, taking 8 minutes more to get to whatever part of, you know, either the south side or going to Berlin, that's fine. But I really think fire and rescue need to be involved, because that bridge is used nonstop from their end.
Thank you.
Feedback, this is all. I'm John LePage. I live on Willie Street, which means I take a bridge to come and go. And so far, there's been no talk about removing the Willie Street Bridge. You do that, it's a no outlet neighborhood. So I guess that's off the grill. Berlin Street, it's already been mentioned. I know I missed quite a bit, not getting here at 6 o'clock. It's already been mentioned about the Blackwell Street Bridge having been closed. And it was a darn good thing to have the Berlin Street Bridge for alternative traffic. We're just talking about what is going on in Barre City, what's been going on in Barre City forever. We have repair projects that require detours. And the Berlin Street Bridge is a reasonable detour for a lot of construction. I mean, that takes it out of the personal realm for any of us that live in Ward 3, the north end of the city. The other thing that has already been mentioned, and I think it's a really significant factor, is to take that route away from police, fire, and ambulance. We're talking public safety here, where in the case of certainly fire and ambulance, we're talking where seconds count in terms of saving lives. And we're talking about taking the fastest route from that department to our local hospital. I'm telling you what, it don't want to be my life, it don't want to be the life of anyone you love or care for. And then when it comes to the police department, we're talking about the potential, every once in a while, you'll get somebody who escapes an ordinary routine arrest and they're on foot. And you take that bridge out and you're cutting a very usable route to navigate from one avenue in the city to another. Really bad idea to remove that bridge. And now we can get to a personal point where I wasn't riding in a helicopter on July 10th of 2023, but I was standing on the Berlin Street Bridge. And I watched the water rise. And I watched 120 gallon, two of them, 120 pound, 120 gallon, those large propane cylinders rolling underneath the bridge. I watched a full size pickup truck rolling underneath that bridge. I did not see debris collecting on that bridge, stopping the water. It was a really big flood that came up to the abutment of the bridge, went around it, and never went over the top of the bridge where I was standing. So these hydrology studies are valid from the context of hydrology, but my observation was that the bridge did not affect, it didn't change the flooding. The waters were higher than the surrounding land. Removing the bridge is not going to change a 100-year flood, which we had 2 of them in a row. It's a really bad idea. It costs money to remove the bridge. And it's a bad idea to remove it from the standpoint of public safety. And then we're looking at traffic concerns, which anybody who lives, drives, shops, does business in Barre City notices that we can have traffic congestion around North Main Street and Route 62. And a lot of us who live and work and commute around here will use Boynton Street and Center Street to avoid that Main Street traffic. And do we use the Berlin Street Bridge to access that, to get away from Barre City traffic and nightmare and reduce it? Yes, we do, every day, night and day. Removing it is going to make congestion at the intersection of Maple, North Main, and 62. On too many counts, it's a bad idea. I don't know how much research has gone into that, but obviously not enough if anybody's even considering it. Thank you.
Comments. I want to just respond very briefly to something Joe Ellen said, which is that the city also has an adopted flood resiliency plan that sets priorities. As Nicholas had said, there are a number of very, very long lists of projects that various groups have suggested, not just the river project, but the hazard mitigation plan for the city of Barre, the city plan for the city of Barre, various mitigation studies over the years. And the flood resiliency plan, which is adopted by council and updated every 6 months, is designed to choose from among those what rises to the top at any given moment based on what we have funding and ability and data to back up. So that's one of the ways that we are identifying sort of the top level of projects to pursue next.
Couple more.
I'm just wondering about the emergency services. It gets flooded out every time there's a flood, in that you can't get to it. They have to relocate everything. I was against it going there in the first place. I was on the fire department for a few years. I put 40 years in with Berlin. The better place would have been up by Hope Cemetery. Didn't get voted in. But you still now, every time it floods, have a problem. Taking out that bridge is gonna mean they're gonna have to go around, because you aren't gonna move them. You aren't even gonna put a road in off the backside so you can get to it during a flood. Because that would make sense. You're gonna let it set up there, the people get caught in it till the flood is over, or they hike up the bank to North Barre, old school. Bad location, and you're talking about buying out all that property down below and turning it into public land that can flood. But you haven't talked about what you're gonna do with your emergency services. Is it something you feel you don't need? Or are you just gonna keep relocating them every time it floods? It can't really work from the board.
We're designing a street behind the public safety building up to the old school building up there. So that's gonna be our secondary access. It'll be only emergency access, only when the main street is impassable or flooded. So it's a great point, and that's why after the 22 flood, we started working with the property owner up there, and we started designing the road to make sure that that we can have access to the building.
Hello, Samantha Lee. those who do not, my name is Fern Doolin. I have resided on Vernon Street since '97. I have seen the area go through so many changes. However, the thing that I'm concerned about is the bridge, and everybody has brought up so many great points about emergency services and how the woman over there had spoken of, like, whether you're on the side of science, like, I very much am an environmentalist. I would love to be able to see something, but to go and sacrifice, as you said, a daily occurrence for safety for something that is a once in 100-year flood, which there could be other solutions, as other people have said. I am someone who has gone and had several emergencies at my house. I am the second house from the bridge. So I think kind of having that unique perspective of being so close to the bridge, and then would be having to go essentially up to the top of Berlin Street to be able to have emergency access to me. There was a fire that was 4 houses up from me on Berlin Street not too long ago, a couple months ago. And me and my husband were talking about it for the perspective of if the bridge was not there. And as someone else had mentioned, during emergency services, seconds count. And as far as this is just kind of personal perspective for when the bridge was temporarily closed for a couple months. As I said, I am the second house from the bridge. We had so much traffic of people just ignoring the signs and coming down and turning around, and that garage access that's directly across from us. We had our vehicles hit by people. We had several close calls of people not paying attention when we were going and crossing the road, where us ourselves were almost hit. So my only concern and plea for you guys is that if you do go through this, please consider other options, but also consider to the fact of the people who do live very close to the bridge, that they are going to be probably affected the hardest for that, because there will be that traffic. They are right next to the river.
And you're turning into a pumpkin, Nicholas. So now I guarantee you, after this meeting, someone's going to walk up to me and say, "Are you sorry you asked?" No, I'm not. Feedback, regardless of the feedback, it's always the feedback your constituents. This is your city too. The 7 of us just happen to be serving. So, all of the points that we've talked about, I've not had one river scientist say to me that significant dredging does not have a place. We call it maintenance, does not have a place in the program. It does. It doesn't have to be one or the other, whether, I've heard people say, well, I'm not an environment, I'm not, a dredging person, I'm a tree hugger. You can be both. Both of the opinions are valuable. So we're going to pivot a little bit, and we're going to look to the future, because the reason for this whole forum was to talk about the future of the North End, what your vision is, what your individual vision is for the future of the North End. This conversation started with the governor when first time I've ever heard of a sitting governor come to a city council meeting, and he presented his plan for the North End. It was a conceptual plan. We heard a lot of feedback on it. Some people liked it, some people hated it, but unfortunately we didn't really continue the discussion, and so that's what we're doing this evening. So I don't know if any of you remember the governor's plan. He talked about the removal of structures along 302 and creating a green space with a walking path where we could catch and collect stormwater. Talked about some development of some areas that unfortunately can't be developed, they're wetlands. So in that respect, the plan did get a little ahead of itself, but I was grateful for the plan. So we've got some surveys and some maps here. We've got 75 of them. We're just going to take a quick break, like 2 minutes. I'm going to ask you to come up, grab a pen. I know we don't have 75 pens there. We've got some pencils as well. If you brought a pen, please don't take a pen, but why doesn't everyone, we'll take 2 minutes and just have everybody come and grab one of these. And you got a bail. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Nicholas. See you tomorrow.
Here, I'll let you handle it all.
It's all the same. I'm just splitting them up so you don't all come to the same place. There you go. There you go. It's all the same. Just split it up. Sorry. There's another pile here. All the same pile, just splitting them up so people go to different places. If you want anything, if you're a color guy, pick a color.
You get the colored pencil.
Absolutely. Oh, come on.
He didn't want to go.
Has fire weighed in on this bridge?
Yeah. Not if he had a choice between closing it and not closing it, it would be not closing it. But depending on the mitigation, the flood mitigation, the city is not necessarily.
I mean, I know all about.
I mean, for me, I want to replace it.
Well, and I know all about flood mitigation. Also, I haven't read on
Did you also have red
my question is there anything?
They're looking at that. The short answer they gave me was you just push the problem south. Right. No. I get it, but that was their short answer. Oh, that one. Yeah, those are different. So you need that, and you need a pen. They're free. Okay, does everybody have one? Oh. Thank you. Oh, you take one of those? Has everybody got the homework? You can take your time on the survey, but what I'd really like you to focus on is the map. The map that's on the back of the page. And draw a little bit from your vision, not draw literally, but draw a little bit from your vision and think about what the north end could look like. And I know we're all going to have different vision about what the north end could look like because we all have different experiences in the north end. You know, for me, I remember football at the old football field on North Barre. And most importantly, I remember the Beddoe family. There was like 6 jillion of them. And I grew up in Teddy, and you didn't set foot in the north end unless you were friends with at least one of the Beddoes. And every kid in Barre knew that. So, you know, I have fond memories of growing up in the north end, and especially post-flood as things have fallen into disrepair, and I don't think we've done as good a job on the north end as we probably should have, and given it as much attention as we probably should have. You know, I'm hoping we can change that. So if any of you have thought about, and I'll go first. Like I said, the one thing I really liked about the governor's plan was the idea that of a big green space, not on the RK Miles side, but on the other side of 302. Taking some of the buildings that currently occupy that space, many of which are in disrepair, or they're not occupied at all. You know, like the old Dairy Queen and what was the Salvation Army recently. I really liked that part of the plan. I could close my eyes and I could just envision, you know, a 30, 50-foot wide green space with this trail that runs down the center of it. You know, not in a straight line, but kind of meanders. And after all, we're the granite capital of the world, so I'm sure we could come up with a few sculptures, a couple of playground sculptures. Keep in mind that once we buy that land, we can't redevelop it. We can't ever put a home there, so we got to be really strategic about that. Another thing that I've said at the council, and one thing I do intend to pursue with the CDBG-DR grant funds, is submit an application for some significant housing. You know, we've got the North Barre Manor, but that's only for certain people. It's not workforce housing. But I think in order to, you know, if you want to make an area vibrant, put people in it. So that would be one of my ideas, to create a significant housing project, 50 or plus units,
somewhere in the north end. And then, I'm sorry,
Could you just briefly tell us what some of the things on the map mean?
what they mean?
Yeah, there's like little triangles and yellow dots and so is there information on the map?
Okay, well, you see, let me just orientate you. Let me hold it so we're this way. So you can see Beckley Hill coming up there, 302 coming down the center, and we can leave the rest of your imagination, Verb. You can draw whatever you want. So have you orientated yourself to the map?
Well, yeah, I can, but I see there are some like yellow triangles over lines, are those places where we have bought out? And then there's some little round dots on the corner of Smith and.
Oh, for purposes of this discussion, you can just disregard those.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you don't need to pay attention to them. Sorry about that. I should have mentioned that. So, thank you. I'm glad you are. And then the other thing I thought about, and got to give Dave Delcor a little bit of credit, thought about down by the Air Street property, which is going to be, which is the subject of a buyout, about putting river access there. So as long as we're digging down, put in river access. Northbury skating rink, I'd love to see that Northbury skating rink relocated to a more prominent area and redone. We could certainly put that there. And Dave's suggestion was you could have a pedal park. There's a lot of pedal parks all around the country, and we could do something like that. So, like I said, the purpose of this exercise is just, visit with your neighbors. Let's take 10 or 15 minutes. And then if we could just hear your ideas, kind of rapid fire, if you could just give us a kind of a 2-minute summary of what you're thinking and what your ideas for the north end, that would be great. So we're just going to take 15 minutes and let you get creative if that's okay.
How much of that area do you have access to? I mean, I know that the fire station is there, the police station is there, and I'm familiar with that area. I actually live on 6th Street.
I'd like to see us move the railroad through Arcade Miles.
Well, we have been quietly approaching homeowners, because again, if you're gonna talk about putting a significant structure, a structure with 50 or 60 housing units in it, and obviously we're a 3-star mile city, if we want to do that kind of development, we have to go on. Doesn't mean we go this high as a high rise, we have to go on. So I'd rather not get into specifics, because we're having quiet conversations with homeowners in the neighborhood who have approached the city, and they said that they would be willing to sell their property. So in terms of property control, I don't really have a lot of concern about that. We know.
Yeah, that's
we know already that there's some people who don't want to sell, no matter what the price, and that's okay.
But I live on that street.
Mhm.
And so.
Which street?
I live on 6th Street.
6th Street?
So.
I'm not aware we've had any specific discussions with people on 6th Street.
Well, if I live on 6th Street and we're talking about building at Ayers.
Yeah.
That's right across the street from me.
Yeah, it would be a park. So I don't think it's something that.
Right, but if we're talking about putting a high rise over in Wabi Park.
No, it wouldn't be in Wabi Park. Wabi Park, I don't know if you follow the city council meetings, but.
I do.
Yeah, Wabi Park is single family and duplex.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, and I'm not complaining about that. It's just in doing our dream vision here. If I wanna put Dollywood in there, if that's my vision right now, I wanna know how much space I've got to do that.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm saying to you right now.
Well, we're approaching it a little bit differently.
Okay.
What we're doing is listening to ideas and then going out and acquiring, getting the site.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a different process. And quite frankly, the reason for that is there are actually quite a few folks on the north end who would be glad if we approached them for a buyout.
And I understand.
I understand. So,
I know my neighbors well.
yeah, it would be, it seemed to us that it would be a little cruel to go out and speak to everybody whom we know darn well that we aren't even going to, if we advance these projects, we're not even going to close with 10% of the people we approach. So we're trying to take a different approach. so we don't get anyone's hopes up.
Okay.
Okay, let's get to work. Oh, I'm sorry, man, yes.
What are your plans for Stampede Square and Vine Street in that area? Are there buyouts happening there?
There are buyouts happening in that area, yes. Most of those properties have already, along the riverbank, have already been identified, and we'll be starting to close on those buyouts. There are others in that neighborhood that we just, as Nicholas said, we didn't see the mitigation value. They're right in the middle of the neighborhood, and we just can't direct water there. So long-term with our plans is going to be to pursue additional elevation funds. We were successful this year in helping some folks elevate their homes, and we're going to continue to do that. But I will tell you, I won't be here when it's done. I mean, I'll be in Vermont. I hope I'll be alive, but I won't be there when this is done. This is a 10-year journey. I mean, if you're an optimist, this is a 10-year journey. You know, some of the projects that we talked about, well, you know, can't you just replace the Berlin Street Bridge with an additional, you know, with a trestle bridge? Sure, for $10 million that we don't have, that would double and triple our tax rates. I mean, this flooding has put us in a tough spot, and it's going to take decades, probably plural, to put the city back right. It just is. So for those areas, you know, I wish we could do 50 houses a year. In my wildest dreams, we might be able to do 5, maybe. But listen, we're in this together, and we're going to do the best we can. So that's why we're here tonight, to collect your ideas. So let's get to work. I want to hear them.
Yes, idea? You know what, if anyone, listen, for those of you who are working while they talk and multitasking, that's great. For some of you who want to come up and say, I'd like to see this, just follow each other right up. When he's done, someone else jump out.
Hi, I'm Paul Sharon. I live on Vine Street in the North End. One of the things that I have seen in my travels in flood-prone areas of the country, like New Orleans, is when you build, you put a slab on the bottom, and that's where you park your cars, and you begin your residences on the second floor. Flooding comes, you leave, the mud builds up, you come back, you clean it out, and life goes on. That part of the North End, I would say from Beckley Street to 6th Street, many of those houses are not returning. And there seems like there is no reason, but it would take private funding, I know. We can't do this with emergency FEMA funding. But if we could get the private funding to build apartment houses, we have, God, what are we, 1,000 units short just in central Vermont? How long would it take once those housing units were up online to get those rented? Nothing. But there doesn't seem to be the investment money interested in doing that.
Not if it's low income. If it's high income, they're interested.
Okay.
Well, listen, we're going to address that elephant. In the city of Barre, we have a high percentage of people who are living at or below the poverty line. Now, it would be unhealthy if we did nothing, if all of our housing that we developed over the next 5 years is subsidized housing. That would be unhealthy because it doesn't reflect it doesn't reflect the numbers in our community.
Right.
But having said that, probably when we do develop housing, I would guess, if I had to throw a number out, I would say roughly 1/3 of it would be affordable or subsidized. And that word affordable means a lot of things to a lot of different people. There's, you know, if we were to take a poll and say, well, what do you consider affordable for a 1-bedroom apartment? There's probably 60 people here, we have 60 different answers on what that means. So we will build subsidized and affordable housing, and we will build market rate housing. If we do anything else, we're just gonna skew things, and it's not gonna be healthy one way or the other. If you build too much market rate, good people, our neighbors who can't afford market rate, need a place to live, they don't have a place to live. And if you build nothing but subsidized, our neighbor, the nurse who works at the hospital, she can't live there. because she doesn't qualify. So we are keeping an eye on that. You know, we truly do all the time. So anybody, oh, and as far as the, just show of hands, because one of the things that I've heard when I talk about the North End, I've had people say, don't spoil the North End, don't ruin it. You know, it's neighborhoods, it's, how many people would object, you know, if we built a common sense, and listen, if we build anything here in Barre, guaranteed you're gonna park underneath it and live on the second floor. Because you'd be, the buildings that didn't city place, built to modern flood standards, didn't get damaged. Down the street on Keith Avenue, built to flood standards, didn't get damaged. All of the other buildings downtown, built at the turn of the century, wiped out. So believe me, we've learned that lesson. But how many people would object if we, and just imagine it, a mixture of affordable and market rate. How many people would object if we could acquire, say, a 2-acre site in the North End, probably closer to the Mutwa than further away from it? How many people would object to having a developer build a 50 to 65 unit dwelling, you know, apartment, multi-story apartment building? Would anybody object and think that that would like ruin things on the North End? Or do you, sincerely, I'm asking a real question.
Question. 50 units.
Yeah.
50 to 100 cars. Where are you gonna park them?
Well, you park underneath. So on a square footage basis, some of the parking would be underneath, some would be surface parking. So when you talk 50 to 60 cars, okay, you would need, so a parking space, and yes, I do develop property for a living. A parking space is roughly 20 by 10. That's now not including travel ways. So that's 20 by 10, that's 200 square feet. So if you want to park, that's for one car, 200 square feet. You want to park 10 cars, that's 2,000 square feet. You want to park, you know, 5 times that, that's 10,000 square feet. That's roughly a quarter of an acre. Now, when you figure in travel ways, probably closer to half an acre, believe it or not, the travel ways take up that space. So that's why I'm talking about a 2-acre site, because obviously you're going to need places for people to park. Yeah, John.
I think it'd be a great idea. And all those people would be using the Berlin Street Bridge to get to the job.
They might, John. Let's take it down.
Wow, that's which we're not gonna do.
Never say never. I
say
don't
never.
use never. That's too big a word for me. But I just want to see how many people would absolutely object to having a 50 or 60 unit apartment building somewhere in the North End, you know, appropriately placed, thoughtfully placed, mixture of market rate. How many people thinks that would just ruin the neighborhood, the whole neighborhood? So if you, no, fair enough. I mean, I asked because I want to know. You had your hand up twice, man. That doesn't matter. That doesn't count.
Can I make a comment?
No, I asked a question because I want to know. So, you know, give or take, probably about 6 of you think that wouldn't be such a good idea. And sincerely, when I ask questions, it's because I want to learn. Any one of you who had your hands up, I'd be interested in knowing why.
Right there, that was our first forever home. We bought our home years ago. There was never only a flood of 2007, okay? And then and then they did regular maintenance. Previous owners that were living in our house was Linda Gustafson. Currently still in Burlington. She's right here.
Okay, so in a nutshell, you just think it would ruin the character of the neighborhood. But I'm not talking about, I mean, you know, I love Google Maps. Go to Google Maps and measure, go to the city access program. And we're 3 square miles. You know, that's a lot of acres. So, you know, when I think about housing, I think about how to develop housing that's both market rate, housing that's affordable, and developing more of it. Like I keep saying, we're a 3 square mile city. How do you develop a 3 square mile city and provide 200 housing units without going up? I mean, you simply have to. So, you know, we wouldn't be mowing down the whole North End. We wouldn't be mowing down 3rd Street and 4th Street and 2nd Street and mowing down those neighborhoods in entirety. That would change the character of the North End. Yes.
I'm who she mentioned. I'm Linda Hill Gustafson, and I grew up on at 22nd Street. I grew up at 22nd Street, and the old North End is, it's a home. It's always going to be my home. I'm living in Essex Junction now, but Barre is my home, and it was individualized. We all had homes or two-story, duplexes where people live. And to make it all one huge apartment building takes away, it detracts. I'm a historian, I really believe in the history of my city. And I want to save that history as much as I can, but I want to make sure it's the right city for all the people, not just the wealthy people, but the people who don't have as much as the wealthy. So I think it's important to individualize homes as much as possible and not have this giant apartment complex. We just have to come up to Williston and South Burlington and see all of those huge apartment buildings going up. And to me, that is so impersonal. That's not individualized.
Thank you. And I agree with everything you just said, that, it is a balance. I mean, how do we go walk around the North End now? To me, it's sad. Because what I remember the swimming pool. Yes, I'm that old. I remember the swimming pool, I remember the football field, I remember the Bedeaus, but that was a long time ago. And now we're looking at the future, and we're looking at trying to make these homes that we want to make affordable. We want to see people stay in them. That's why we're not forcing anybody to sell. If the answer is no, it's no. Right. But if the city can find a way to assemble a 2-acre site and create a 50 or have a developer create a 50 or 60 unit building, I think that's a good thing. Because as people age out, as people get older, they struggle to maintain their properties, and they do love their neighborhood, and they'd love to be able to stay. So that's one of the things I've been saying is as we rebuild the North End and as we give people options, like you can elevate your home. Well, when you elevate your home, if it's going to take, if it's a 5 or 6 month project, well, where are you going to go in the meanwhile? Right. So I think we have to be really thoughtful. We all have a history with the North End. I have a history with the North End. And whatever we do, we have to make sure we're really thoughtful about it. Representative Booten?
Yeah. For context, Summer Street Apartments. Okay, sorry. For context, how many units are in Summer Street Apartments? Does anybody know how many units are in Summer Street Apartments?
40. I'm gonna get it wrong. I'm gonna say 50. I'm gonna round
50. So you're talking about a.
Oh, so when you say Summer Street, East Avenue?
Correct.
Oh, okay, the East Avenue building, that's around 50.
Okay. So the building that you were talking about would be smaller than that one? Or about the same size?
About the same size.
Okay. And I'm just curious if it would change anybody's opinion if it was on the location where the budget is. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, we'll think about that. Listen, let me quiet down and let all of you do a little more work. And if you've had enough time to do a little work about what your vision might be for the North End, just jump right up here, grab the mic and let her rip if you could. Anybody?
I'd like to say something.
Where are you talking? You have a question? Go ahead.
You gotta speak way up, Judy. You can yell at me, everybody does.
If you're built a housing complex, it's gonna be by a private developer, it's not gonna have HUD money. For control of the building, because there is the buildings we have currently.
So Judy's question was, if the city is going to acquire the site, first of all, we'd acquire the site and do an RFP. And what Judy asked is, would it be a private developer who doesn't have the HUD restrictions as opposed to, say, a Barre Housing Authority or a Down Street? With most of the funds, Judy, there is an affordable component. It's usually 20–30% of the apartments need to be affordable. And affordable is always based on the county income, county per capita income. So I wouldn't think, as I think of the grant programs, even the CDBG-DR programs that are available, all of those programs come with strings, but they're not unreasonable. You know, they might say 30% needs to be affordable, and here's our definition of affordable when we look at Washington County. They don't even look at Barre, like they don't say affordable when you look at Barre. Sometimes that concerns me because the Washington County picture, if you profile income within Washington County, it looks very different than it does in Barre. So that concerns me, you know, the other way, that some folks who can't afford housing might get left out. So I look at those things all the time.
Concerns me is these buildings were built here in Barre in 1974.
Yep.
They were beautiful. We're pounding the doors to get into them because they were new, they were beautiful. They were for the elderly, but now they're not.
Yeah.
And now it's very difficult to even go into it.
So Judy's concern was specifically aimed at the Barre Housing Authority buildings, different program, Judy. Even Down Street runs a different program than Barre Housing Authority does under the HUD rules. You know, I don't disagree with you. When those buildings were first built, in order to be eligible to live there, it was generally elderly housing. And now HUD has changed their rules, and you know, there's what I would consider to be, very honest with you, an unhealthy mix there. You know, my mom is going to be 95 in August. And my mom, I love my mom very much, and she can live wherever she wants. And I've made that very clear to her. I'll always take care of her. And I've asked her at times, would you like to live in an apartment? And Mom, I'll build you a great apartment. Mom, she just likes it quiet. She has a 4-bedroom home that's way more than she needs, but that's her home. And I appreciate what you said, ma'am. She wants to stay there, and that's okay. And whenever I talk to her about apartments and say, Mom, it might just be easier, she's just, I don't like the noise. She said, you know, Tom, it's funny, when you get to be as old as I am, I love watching children play, but I hate listening to them play. And so she just, you know, wants it quiet. And so that was the basis for my comment about the high rise of some of these other buildings, that, you know, older people, our older neighbors, our moms, our dads, they should just be able to live in peace. And right now, we all know the stories, and they're not. So, but let's not get off subject there. So who else, something to say about the North End, then?
Yes, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm
Oh, you gotta
Sandy.
hold the mic up or they won't hear you at all.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy. I don't have a past here in Barre. I don't know what it was like in its heyday. I hear stories. But unfortunately, I live at the manor, and I will be living there until the day I die. And I would love to see green space. I would love a safe place to walk and just enjoy. And because right now I've got a little patch of green in the backyard. And but I would like to know that it was safe, that all of a sudden the new green space didn't become a homeless camp. I would love to see another high rise, so that, you know, like across the street or something, so that
Not too close, right?
there was affordable housing and for anybody and everybody. And actually on this thing, it was supposed to be Circle 1. I was interested in circling all of that. And so because I'm gonna be here until the day I die, I'm interested in the future of the North End. And you know, Barre actually is like my hometown in Connecticut. And they built the courthouse and the police station right downtown, so there's no stores anymore that you can't go window shopping. And Barre is exactly like my hometown. And my hometown had flooding issues. And they demolished a huge mall, and they made green space there that nobody goes to. And I wanna see the North End thrive. I wanna see people being able, not everybody that lives there out of 120 apartments has a car.
Right.
There's no place, no grocery store. You can't even buy a pair of shoes in Barre. And unless you go to Lenny's.
I was gonna say, don't tell Lenny's that.
Yeah, unless you go to Lenny's, you can afford that. I just wanna see the North End thrive and see people walking about and just let it be a neighborhood, because I mean, that's my home until the day I die, and the only thing I can control is what's in my apartment. But I don't know what the answer is, but the past of Barre is the past. And I love the old neighborhoods and everything in the old buildings, but I don't think they're really feasible for a lot of people these days. And we don't have that neighborhood here. And so,
No, thank you. Thank you very much.
I mean,
And I'm glad you have a lot to say. We're here to listen. Just quick show of hands. How many of you really value green space? Good, pretty much everybody. But how many of you could live in a place where there's plenty of green space, but you don't own it? It's owned by the city, it's a park, it's something like that where you don't necessarily have a yard, but you got a place where you can go and recreate, and most importantly, as this young lady was nice enough to say, feel safe. So again, pretty much all of you.
Well, most of you know me. My name is Peter. I work for O'Reilly. Question is, what happens if the city floods again before you get all these projects into place? How much would it cost to drench the rivers? I hear that all over the city.
Mhm.
You have an answer for that?
How
much it would cost to drench the rivers? Would that be better than taking out the bridge?
No, so to answer your question,
so the CDBG-DR grant, CDBG-GR, disaster recovery grant that I intend to submit, has $3 million in it for riverbed maintenance. So again, some people call it dredging. I really try hard not to use that word because it evokes emotions in some people. It's just strategic maintenance. I do it at my house. You know, the Edgewood Brook borders our property. And so much sediment came down from the development on Windywood Road and just literally, I mean, it was about a 12-foot deep, brook, and it turned into 8 overnight. So we had it, I checked with the state, I checked with the city, and I said, can I get an excavator up here and start cleaning this out? And we've started at the back of the property, and by the end of this summer, we'll work our way towards the front. And we're just gonna remove material that wasn't there 2 years ago. So again, careful about it. We're not, if the riverbed was 15 feet deep originally, you don't make it 20. You make it 15, you put it back the way it was, and you maintain it. So as far as I'm concerned, there's a place for both things. But if those of you who think that if we dredge the river, our problems are over, I can tell you, you're wrong. The water volume that came through this city in July of 2023. Now, one river scientist said to me, and I didn't ask her to back it up with data or anything, but it was just kind of an offhand remark. Your riverbed could have been 75 feet deep and you still would have flooded. The water volume was just too great. So I don't know, there's room for both, sir.
The problem is that if the bridge you took over, and the bridge you took out over on Brook Street, the water gets up and it comes over
Yep.
still.
It still does because of the water volume that we're getting. And listen, Mother Nature's gonna win. This is, if you're gonna plan on being here in Barre for the long haul, then you're gonna be hearing about this annually for the long haul. So who's next? Thank you.
and what would be really helpful is if everyone starts out saying, I would like to see this.
So I've been doing some doodling. I would like to see this.
Well, explain it to your friends here in the room.
Yeah, kind of from you guys can't see. So, can you hear me now, John? Your name? Nick. I'm Nick from Berlin Street. Thank you, John. So we've been kicking around affordability, and I did some quick math because affordable housing is what I do on the day-to-day. So Mayor Lozman mentioned that the area median income, and that's what affordability is based on. It's percentages of basically the average income of Washington County. So for us right now, that's about $80,000. So on average, Washington County makes $80,000. I don't make $80,000.
Per household.
Per household. Yeah, $80,000 per household. So in the North End, I checked on average median income when I was doing the co-op work. So this was a few years, like 8 years ago. The average median income around First through Fourth Street was $20,000. So we are significantly behind the county. So when we talk about affordability, that's usually 40 or 60% of the average, which still puts it at $48,000. So what I was doodling here, I love the idea of a park and some river access for that parking lot where we have to dig down the parking lot by air auto. I would love to see some single family houses. I know it's kind of dated, it's the American dream. I grew up with a house in the yard. I've lived in apartments, and every apartment I lived in, I just couldn't wait to buy a house and get a yard. I hate the amount of time I spend mowing, but I love having the space. So I'd love to see some single family houses. I know that's kind of hard, but there's Habitat, there's other developers who can help do affordable single family housing. And affordable apartment buildings, because right now, if we build a 50-unit apartment building and we do it at market rate, that's gonna be about $4,000 a month for a 2-bedroom house for the developer to break even. Nobody makes any money on that. And that's not affordable, so we need a way to subsidize that and bring those down to affordable. So we need apartment buildings to make it affordable, and those are just much easier to subsidize than housing. But for single family houses, there's all kinds of stuff like Habitat, there's also shared equity programs where other companies can come in and help first time home buyers, because that's the big hurdle. The only thing harder than building a house is getting a mortgage. So we need programs to help first time homeowners get that mortgage. And I put in some green space by where Salvation Army used to be. So if we buy that for the city and that becomes a buyout, then we can never do that, but that would be a space for green space. Because we can't build the apartment buildings or houses wherever we do a buyout, so that's part of the strategy. And I'd love to see like duplexes where the snack shack is. You can easily fit 1, maybe 2 duplexes on that property and still have some yard and green space for kids to grow up. And when we bring all these projects together and center them around community, that's what makes the green space safe. Having a police on every corner, the police do a great job and I love it, but we can't rely on them to make the community safe by themselves. We have to take some ownership over this and work in our neighborhoods and our communities to make our communities safer. So as we build these houses and we welcome new families into these new buildings and the apartment buildings, work to build community with the people we're bringing in to help develop our areas. Thank you.
Next.
Thank you.
Who wants to?
Thanks. I'd like to see the North End remain the North End, a place of rebuilt homes with assistance, financial assistance for homeowners to keep their homes and to keep them in good repair and make them flood resilient. I would give incentives for anyone who would add a unit or an apartment onto their building. I think that would be great. But when I walked around the North End, people were so attached to their homes, and their homes are often beautiful, and the work they could have done was obvious. So I think the North End needs to remain the North End. We just need to make it workable, which means flood mitigation measures, not just what we're doing, but what we have coming down the line. Because climate change, the increased rain is not going to go away. I'd also like it if the council could distinguish between dredging and periodic sediment removal. They're not the same thing. They don't have the same effect. It's just good to know that those are different things. And periodic sediment removal is a good idea. Dredging, not so much, but we won't, let's not go there again. Green space, yes, a grocery store. People who have low incomes are just, for everybody today, the cost of food and the cost of maintaining a house, they need a grocery store, they need choices. And so those are things I would like to see along with childcare and green space. And as Nick was saying, if you have people around
and people living in neighborhoods, you don't need the police on every corner. You need liveliness. And liveliness comes from having things to do and streets that you can get around easily. So those are the few things I would like to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
I'm Patton Scavenge. I actually live down on Sixth Street. I don't know how many of you live down that far into the north end and into that flood area. There's no homes down there except for on Sixth Street anymore. I fought the thought of building apartment buildings down there too when we all first started meeting, until I realized how badly we need housing in this city. Until I started meeting and feeding how many people are living out in the cold all winter long. We need housing in this city. And just because people are low income, don't be afraid of them coming into our neighborhoods. Every night when I go to bed, I have second floor bedroom, and I always looked out that window and said good night over this beautiful city. And all my neighbors' lights were on. I don't have any neighbors anymore, just on one side, and they're great neighbors and I love them. But there's nothing across the street anymore. There's nothing on the next street or the next street. I would rather have apartment buildings now. I've completely changed my mind. I want to hear children playing in that park again. I want my dogs barking at something. We need housing. I want those people back. I want that neighborhood. I want to build my town again. I want people around me again. Almost 70 years old. Somebody can buy my house pretty soon. There's only a few houses left on 6th Street. They're the original houses. The rest of them are gone. Sam, and I love it that you want to build those houses back. You can't. They're done. They're filled with mold and dirt and dust. We haven't even gotten rid of the original dust off the streets from the first flood. My house is filled with it every day from the traffic that goes by. My husband and I aren't going anywhere. We're staying. But I want people back in my neighborhood. So for everyone that doesn't want the apartment buildings, or you're afraid of the people that are going to come in, don't be afraid of them. Get out there and meet them. There's nothing wrong because you're poor. I'm poor. My husband was in the service for 47 years in the Air Force, and guess what? We're still poor, and we're good people. Come on down to 6th Street and meet us. That's all I got to. Oh, I want green space. That's all I get to say.
Please thank your husband for his service. And Sam, that's why I always call it riverbed maintenance. I really try hard not to use the D word. It's just maintenance, and we all have to do it. Okay, who's next? Somebody's got to have some ideas.
I have a very quick one. We keep talking about green space.
Closer.
We keep talking about green space, which I think is a fabulous idea. But one of the things that I think we need to have in our green space is space for community gardens.
Thank you. And I think you can. I have to check. I'll tell you, the FEMA regulations are so strict. You're nodding. Do you know? Can you do raised flower beds? I mean, or are you agreeing with the garden space? That the FEMA rules are so strict and so wonky, and with this administration, they change hourly. So you can't do a permanent structure. You can do a dog park. You can do playground equipment if it doesn't trap debris. I mean, I would suspect you could do raised beds. You just have to be able to remove them. So I think if you made them removable, so you got a platform, and then you store them off-site in the fall, and then put them back, I suspect you could. And I agree. I mean, that I think any green space, it needs to have something in it for everybody.
The
So
one on
who's
Brick
next?
Street has gardens.
Hmm?
The one on Brick Street has community gardens.
Yep. And then perhaps the answer is for that one, you could, like I said, I don't want to say a definite yes, is something, because the rules may have changed since we did Brook Street. Who's next?
So while we've been able to talk a little bit about dense housing, that really is a key to getting some of the population and also the grand list growth to our community. So you all aren't experiencing that tax burden of losing all the properties that have currently gone offline. Now, I really don't want to see a big apartment building, because I live in an apartment complex that has a lot of people. And quite frankly, we don't see a lot of positive behavior out of those dense units in our communities. But if we can also look at other communities that have done dense unit housing properly, it can be done in a really great way that gives people ownership over these properties. We can have shared use properties where people, shared equity, sorry, where people actually have to buy into this program. So you're actually putting a stake in, you're having skin in the game. It's not just, oh, hey, I have an apartment and I can trash it and just move out, but you're having a skin in your neighborhood. You actually want to be involved. You want to talk to your neighbors. I mean, I hear your story about on 6th Street, and I couldn't even imagine life not having people around. It would be depressing and demoralizing. And to see your community, to see your North End, and I don't live in the North End. I live up on Allen Street. I'm away from the flood. I'm away from the problems that many of you deal with, but I care about you all so deeply. And I see the pain and I see the frustration, and I know you all want to still be here. But if we can't bring growth to our grand list, if we can't bring money back to our community, how long can you really continue to stay here? And that's really something that I ask, is that every year property taxes are going to go up. Even on a level budget, you're going to see an increase in your property taxes. But if we're not growing our grand list value, if we're not growing the value of all the properties in our community, you all are going to continue to share that tax burden, and then families continue to drop off. Because we don't see our community members making more money every year like they should be. We don't see them making the fair wages that we want them to. So we have to look sometimes outside the box. And while at first, when the governor came into council and talked about having more dense housing units in the North End, it's like, wow, you know, based on my personal experience, I wasn't a big fan. But as we continue to look down this road of, you know, what these units could potentially bring, you know, to potentially bring in people that are definitely, they have the lower income, they have the affordable, we'll call it, but also to have market rate rents as well. So you're having mixed people congregating and being in a community. And I'm sure that's what all of you love about Barre, is that we all have different backgrounds and come from so many different walks of life, but we all come together in our community because we love it. That's why you're all here today. So that's just my spiel on dense housing. I didn't like it at first, but if we can do it right, if people can buy in and actually want to be there, then it can be something that's really effective.
Thanks, Michael. So anyone else? Well, there's got to be more ideas out there. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question.
Okay.
I technically live in the north end. I live in Center Street, on Center Street, and it's not even showing on the map. I'm just wondering, are there any plans for any type of mitigation? Because I've been here 15 years and I've gone through 300-year floods.
Well, as Councilor Guston mentioned, I mean, we've got a big list of mitigation projects. We're currently focusing on 3. You know, there are 3 that quickly rose, and no, not necessarily the removal of the Berlin Street Bridge. I think that didn't even make top 3. So, and we don't have funding for that. So for those who are concerned that the Berlin Street Bridge is coming out sometime next month, it's not funded. It's a multi-million-dollar project, and we simply don't have the resources to pursue it. So yes, Center Street there are flood mitigation projects that will alleviate flooding not only on Center Street, but all over the city. our challenge is going to be to get through them, find the funding and get through them. And as I've said many times, that is a multi-year process. So, yeah, Sam.
I do think there's a place for dense housing, and that's in the downtown. But I think about the French blocks that happen in Montpelier and how nice it is. So now there are apartments above there, people can walk to the grocery store, they can walk to local businesses. That's a great example of the increasing density of housing. It's right in the neighborhood, and it gives people easy access to downtown.
Yeah, I disagree on some level. I think there's room for dense housing anywhere in the city, even on the north end. There are property owners on the north end who should not own property in our city. I don't want to single them out and point at them, but they should not own property in our city. Their property, they were generally multi-unit building. I know you don't like me, that's okay. They were generally multi-unit building owners who have done nothing to improve the property, haven't stabilized the property, and are leaving the property vacant. So I think those are, prime areas where the city could have a hand in redeveloping, acquire some significant parcels of land. As I've said, those who don't want to sell their home, those who want to elevate it, my wildest dreams, the city goes into the elevation business. $300,000 is the average price to elevate a home. I know we could do it cheaper. And I know we could probably do it better. I know we could probably do it for 200,000. So that's something that, because it's horrifying to me when we're excited because we get $1.2 million, $900,000 in hazard mitigation grants. It's a lot of money. And we can help 3 people for $900,000. Herb, you built for a lifetime. Don't you think, John, you built for a lifetime? Don't you think you could pick a house up, excavate the foundation, pour a new one under it? Don't you think that should cost less than $300,000? It's a staggering amount. So for those who want to stay in the neighborhood, I'll tell you, it's going to be tough because there's not a lot of those funds out there. But for those who love their home and want to stay in their home, the city of Barre, I mean, we're your neighbors. We're not gonna force you out. We're not gonna twist your arm and say you need to sell. But for those homeowners who come to us, one right after another, so that we can accumulate that 2-acre site, and they say, well, we do want out. We're not maintaining our property, and we'd like out. And the city can accumulate a 2-acre site. I think multifamily, higher rise development, dense housing is, like I said, I mean, we're developing up on Prospect Street. That's one of the last developable. There's only 2 others that I know of. We're a 3 square mile city. We simply don't have the room to say we're not going to do, multifamily, multi-story housing everywhere. And to your point, Sam, we absolutely agree on, yeah, there should be a grocery store in the north end. I miss Bud's.
Delis.
I mean, I remember the neighborhood markets in the north end, and there should be neighborhood markets in the north end, and there should be, as you went in, safe walking places, places where you feel safe walking. Yes.
I'll bring you.
Hi, I'm Bernie Rose, and I live here in Barre City. I really appreciate that everybody has brought good ideas, and it really bothers me when people get put down for sharing a good idea. And I think that more in developing and ADUs throughout the rest of the city, as well as working on the north end, because people live in the north end, but like Patty said, a lot of people are gone. And so it's up to the rest of us to keep community going strong. One of the safety things that I have in mind is to make sure you all know about ticks and Lyme disease. And tonight I have 50 cards, so I hope you'll all take one. And remember that in these places, when you're walking around the old buildings and in places that aren't mowed, that one of the things you can do to keep yourself and your kids and your pets safe is do tick checks. And as we develop green space, make safe green space. We also have places like the woman who lives in North Barre Manor. If you try to cross the street at North Barre Manor, watch out, you might get run down. If you wanna take the bus to go into town, you can't do it because there isn't a bus stop. It's right in the middle of the street. So maybe some of the things we can do, while we are repaving or building the north end, is to remember that when we put in apartment buildings, we also create pedestrians, and we need pedestrian walkways and public transportation. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do not dislike you, I just don't always agree with you.
Most of the time. Who's next?
I just want to, first, I want to underline what Nick was saying about how we can't depend on the Barre City PD to take care of all of our crime issues. And that just really resonated with me. I live in a no outlet neighborhood, and I'm thinking there must be somewhere around 30 people live there, and most of us know each other on a first name basis. I can't remember when I saw a Barre City cruiser in that neighborhood. And I don't expect that can happen everywhere, but if it isn't happening in your neighborhood and you can do anything toward that, please do, because Barre City PD doesn't work on zero money. Our tax money goes for that too. And they are doing the best they can with what they got going on, okay? And the other thing is the concern over high rise and multi-unit housing and people that are concerned about the aesthetics of the city. We don't have to be looking at it as putting in 5 more North Barre Manors. We don't have to be looking at it like 13-story buildings. We've done a lot of things that we can maintain a sense of aesthetics with. And so try to imagine something that isn't as egregious as your worst dreams might be. Thank you.
Thanks. Who's next?
One
Yes.
short, just one short question. Why did I-
You don't ask short questions.
To you, that's what I
Yes,
know.
go ahead.
About transportation says new bridge to be started 27, to be done in 28.
No.
You know nothing about it.
Well, it's because it's not happening.
It's
No,
not
there is no plan, there is no budget for replacing any of the bridges in
I
Barre
agree with
currently with Patriots. So no, I'm not
Nice
sure
new truck
where you heard that, sir, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's not, I mean, the fight that we're having with V-Trans right now, to be honest with you, is they have extended all of the paving on Route 14, Route 302, and we all drive down that road. They've extended that currently to 2030 because of budget constraints. So, yeah, I wish they had the money to replace the Berlin Street Bridge because they're, and again, Joe Flynn has been, and the governor have been incredibly gracious towards Barre and supportive, but, you know, they've got their own budget constraints. So who's next as we talk about the north end?
Thank you.
So just kind of one of my questions is that.
Who is this?
This is my daughter.
Hi, how are you?
So we are a family in the North End, and we are going and talking about building community and stuff. We do have young families, including myself, down on the Old North End. One of the concerns that I have is the parks that were put in, you know, years ago. I remember being 9 years old and being in this building and talking about, hey, you know, what's your perspective from a 9-year-old? What would you want for a playground? What would you want for the river to be safe to swim in? So this is kind of, you know, reminiscent for me, and now I'm standing here with my daughter asking the same things of, you know, if we're gonna build community, especially for like bringing in like young families, what are your concerns about, you know, these playgrounds just kind of going to the wayside? The one that's down on Vine Street, you know, I know that Mr. Sharon over here, you've done a lot of work essentially by yourselves on that to go and try to help maintain that, because I know that your daughter and I have spoke several times on that. The ones that are down by Blackwell Street, you know, they just kind of sit there to rust. You know, people can't always go over to Playground 2000 and stuff like that. We do have these parks that just have been forgotten and not maintained by the city. So what would be your thoughts on kind of progressing for that?
I mean, it's not lip service, maintain it. Part of the reason why, I don't know where, community is such an overused word. I mean, I wish I had like a dime for every time I hear it. And I think a lot about it. People stopped using them, so that's why they fell into disrepair. All of a sudden, for whatever reason, I don't know why, neighborhoods sort of fell apart. People stopped connecting with each other. I don't know, maybe we were all on our phones or on the internet, but we stopped connecting with each other. We stopped taking our kids to the park. And when the parks aren't being used, generally it's not a priority, so they're really not being maintained. And that's why, listen, I hope more than anything else, regardless of anything we do on the North End, and I won't use the C word, we bring the sense of neighborhood back. Where you know your neighbor, you take care of your neighbor, you've got that, I heard, several times tonight, a safe place where I can walk. And, not have to feel vulnerable, not have to feel judged. Well, that's what, neighborhoods are all about. And I've had the opportunity, because as I've chased my daughter around the country, and she's back here in Vermont now, she finally bought a home, her and her husband, and they're gonna start a family here in Vermont. But for years, decades, I chased her around the country to Denver, Colorado, Washington, DC. And the sense of neighborhood, even though those are humongous, huge cities, I had a greater sense of neighborhood in Denver, Colorado than I did in Barre, Vermont. But it was these little sections of Denver where, Miranda never wandered more than 6 square blocks from her home, which happened to be a 14-story high-rise. But she had everything she wanted within 6 blocks. She had parks, she had friends. And I said, I would ask her when she's in Denver, don't you want a home? And she'd say, why? Then I have to have somebody mow my lawn, or I have to mow it myself. This is great, Dad, I get to use it for free. And so I hope more than anything else, we can bring the sense of neighborhood back to the North End. And Sam, I'm not trying to paraphrase, but I think that's what you mean when you talk about, single family homes and that sense of neighborhood. And I think it all has a place. I think multi-story, larger housing complexes have a place in any neighborhood. Because not everyone wants to own a home, not everyone wants to maintain a home. And not everyone wants to live in an apartment, but we're all different, we're all diverse. And so I think you can bring a sense of neighborhood back, regardless of how you do it, if it's done thoughtfully. So somebody's gotta be next.
Yes, sir.
We've been talking a lot about neighborhoods. I know Jeff Bergeron, remember this?
They didn't hear a word you said.
Do you remember in the 80s when they had the Barre area neighborhood housing services? I believe it was your aunt, Nancy.
My dad and your dad.
Yeah, my dad, Wayne. Anyway, there might be a place for this, another organization like that, to help people lift up their homes or make improvements, infrastructure improvements. And I don't know if you remember it, Tom, but back in the 80s, I think something like that would be very helpful in this instance.
Community action.
Thank you. Who's next?
That was community action.
Yep, come on up, Amy. Okay, your vision for the North End.
I would like to see some type of community space. I think it's great that we have this space to use, but it is private property. I would love there be some kind of city infrastructure, because we don't really have that in the North End. So if there's some way when some building gets built, maybe the first floor or something up by the city. And then, as I was looking through the choices on the multiple choice there, some of them I felt like, well, you might need, a lot of those are private business things, and maybe they would come and go, but maybe just having a building that could serve multiple uses over time, because I think that should run into the All In for Barre event. And that was kind of looking at like, what are things we wish we could have that we, the city can't afford to pay for, but maybe we can figure out other ways to have as shared infrastructure. And one of those was like some kind of community space. Kind of like hard to figure out exactly what that is. The auditorium does a lot of that. But I'd like to see some kind of public space in the North End if we could. And then I want to drag Judy into talking. I want to drag Judy into talking, but
part of the question I have, which is for the, specifically for the CDBGR grant, can the city, buy commercial properties? Because Judy was kind of doing a whole string of, we have these damaged commercial properties on North Main Street, and what can happen to those, and I'm curious if the money can be used to do anything with buying up those properties to use for other things.
And Josh is my resident expert on this. I think the quick answer is no, you cannot. That CDBG-DR money cannot be used for acquisition unless you are acquiring and essentially leaving the property there and rehabbing. Is that correct? Yeah, so unfortunately, no, and that's one of the things I really dislike about the FEMA. Never, I mean, think of that, in perpetuity, when we affect these buyouts, even if, never, in perpetuity. You know, I mean, our country is 250 years old next year. So 250 years from now, even though climate change, weather patterns will change again, the climate will change again, it's a cycle, it will change. When new flood-prone areas pop up, and all of a sudden some of those areas that the city of Barre bought out, and they'll be talking about us in 250 years, some of those areas that we bought out, when flood patterns change and they're no longer in the floodway, you won't be able to build on them. They'll be like this wasteland. To me, it just seems absolutely silly. So that's a great question, Amy. It's a huge frustration I have that you can't ever make the case, as I think it was you, sir, who said, well, pick it up, you know, and just park underneath, but everybody else live on the second floor out of harm's way. Can't do that if you affect a FEMA buyout. I mean, to me, it's common sense in a 3 square mile city that we can't do it. So who's next? Your vision for the North End? Yes, sir.
I'd like to see the North End rebuilt. I can remember there used to be 2 police officers every night walking the beat back and forth, checking all the buildings. You don't see that anymore either. I'd like to see that again. You had Bud's Market down here. That used to be a good store. And then you had the Dairy Queen where Salvation Army was. That was years ago. You had a machine shop where Dollar General is now.
Then Times Argus. No, but Times Argus took it over
Times
after that.
Argus took it over. At 8:45 when I was growing up, the whistle blew in Barre. If you weren't home at 9 o'clock as a kid, the police would take you home. They used to have a police athletic league for children and bike patrols. They had a place called the White House where past the post office for kids in high school like me would go every night after a baseball game or a football game and have fun. I would like to see a place for children. So they would be safe. North End, beautiful place. Skating rink, do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Do you remember going down the bank on the sled before the fire department was in?
Yes, I do.
I went to school there.
But yeah, but those, I grew up with them. And Rank Forest, I grew up with them. In fact, I still work with them for those today. It's a wonderful city. There's been a lot of changes. Some for good and some for not so good. Where Newberry's was, I'd like to see something going there big time. It's been empty for so long. There was Edicott, shoe store, and then Homer Fence, Fisherman's across the road, all gone. I'd like to see things a little bit better. Housing developments down here would be great. 6th Street, 3rd Street, 2nd Street, I remember them all. I played on them when I was a kid. It's all gone. I'd like to see it rebuilt.
Thank you. Who's next? Anyone? We're getting, what time is it? I think we're getting there. It's 8:07. We've actually gone a little past. Sure, last chance. Anyone else?
One quick thing.
Yes, of course.
if you're having the housing development here in the north end, I do think, and I would like to see a place for childcare, because you can't find childcare in Barre anywhere.
Right.
Because there aren't any spots available.
Childcare and groceries, that's on the list as well.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question, and I think you would know the answer because you're there.
No pressure.
Flood was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Hmm.
I mean, I saw a car float down the middle of the road,
Mhm.
and I saw dumpsters in the middle of the road. It's like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like that. Do you know what the bulk of material in the rivers that were clogging things up, were they man-made or nature-made?
That clogged combination, but I'm gonna say, and counsel, anybody in the audience, I would say probably 75% nature made, trees,
Yep.
big trees.
Yep.
Trees like we had never seen, we've never seen riverbanks let go as they did in 2023.
Oh, yeah.
And then those trees would, almost like a beaver, those trees would clog up the river. And then the propane tanks, and then the dumpsters, and then the cars, and then the Frito-Lay truck came along and, you know, kind of finished it all off. So combination of both. And our challenge, you know, as a city, and again, it's everybody up here is gonna continue long after our service ends. We've got our work cut out for us. You know, the climate, you know, Mother Nature isn't gonna change for us. So that is what it is. Climate change is real. We have to accept it, and we have to accept the fact that, you know, here we are. I mean, how many miles are we away from our friends in the Northeast Kingdom? I mean, they got hammered for the third time in a row on the 11th, and I almost feel guilty, you know, sitting here in Barry's mayor saying, "Oh shit, glad it wasn't us," you know. But for the third year in a row, and we're only 40 miles away. It could have just, if that storm pattern had shifted, believe me, I watched it all afternoon, and I was happy when it shifted north. But so it's going to happen again. We've got our work cut out for us. This next round, Josh is going to be a huge help, so important to the city. You came just in time, Josh, because we have got so much work to do for the CDBG DR applications and to get our fair share, to get the lion's share, because I'm the mayor of Barre. I don't care about being fair. I want the best for Barre. So we're going to be doing our best to get the lion's share of that $55 million, and a lot of the projects that we talked about, you know, here tonight will be a big part of that. So anyone else? Last chance, council? Yeah.
Just want to say one thing. I grew up on,
I grew up at 25 Stamping Square, a lot of years ago. And every spring, my sister and I would sit in our utility room and we would watch the spring stuff go down. And there were chairs and every kind of furniture you could ever imagine, old tins, old everything. And a lot of those things would just get stuck right in that river because there was nowhere for them to go. I can't imagine if we ever dredged, your word, but what we'd ever find underneath there, because we would actually sit there and tally how many chairs, how many tables, how many old cars.
Oh my
And
God.
that's been going on for years, so it's filled up so much more, and we're still looking at the same thing all these years later.
I know, we might find Jimmy Hoffa after all these years. So listen, we're gonna wrap it up, but before I do, I've gotta thank the mayor of the North End, Rick Denty, and the Mutual Club for being so generous, and I did my best to try to get him to open the bar. He wouldn't budge. Listen, thank you everybody for coming. This isn't your last bite at the apple. We'll do this again. Those, and if you want to take those home, if you've completed the survey and you want to return them, Nicholas is going to get those up on the webpage. So if you want to doodle a little bit in the privacy of your own home and make some notes on that and get it back to us, we really, really want to hear your ideas. Thank you again.
Point of order. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
We do need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved. Seconded.
Yep.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please, by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we are adjourned.
Yeah, no worries. I wasn't sure, but I knew we opened the meeting, so I figured.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you for what you had to say. Thank you for what you said. Right here.
Brian, anywhere you
Right
want's
here.
good. Thanks for being here tonight. Hi, Eddie. Thanks for being here tonight. Absolutely.
I thought we had to get the shots. I was like, wow, we have a couple minutes. Just operating under a mistaken understanding. Hi. I do, as a matter of fact. Yes. Yeah. I don't have paint.
No.
But I do have signs.
Put them in that file.
For you.
I think
Let me
these
grab it,
ones
you can just sit
are the
on it.
ones that. Yep.
Yeah,
Put 'em
yeah,
right here.
right there.
I'll put them in the front so that way people know. I'm a city councilor here in Working Great. Okay, I love loaded questions. Okay, sure. Yep.
I want to know what the city sees. I want to see Barre is a territory. So what can we do?
We have to promote currently the things that we have going on. What's the matter? That's not like Brad's being a brat.
I didn't even. He was the one that saw wrong.
Okay.
I'm going.
So I think one of the biggest things that we have to do is be our own cheerleaders for our community. So when we see events going on, we have to show up. We have to tell other people here.
You get that?
Because we have so many amazing
that application
all right. But we don't share enough of that out there. We don't see enough, like, for example, our concert in the parks on Wednesdays. Food trucks, concert, farmers market, all in one location.
I was in grade school.
Spurts. So trying to bring people into our community like that. Things like Spalding High School football games, our restaurants, things like we have the basketball tournament at the auditorium. That's another reason to bring people up off the highway. But realistically, if you're going to get them off the highway, off 89, they need to come here for a purpose. So we get them to come to an event, something like a basketball game. They have dinner, they get coffee at Dunkin', they fill up their gas tank. So when we can bring commerce to our community, everybody succeeds. Sure.
I know the point you're making. I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is, if that building had burned, we couldn't get to it.